Joining remotely. I want to welcome those people who are joining remotely, as well as welcome all those who came here in person and are enjoying the sushi. If only you can enjoy sushi remotely. We just a second. We will begin momentarily. I wanted to thank, before we begin, I wanted to thank our co-sponsors of tonight's program. The program is co-sponsored by a generous contribution from the Benjamin Landmark Association Foundation. They do monuments and headstones for the afterlife, as well as the Zoom is made possible by Gam Zoom Latova. A fellow, my dear friend, Kiva Bolter, who actually does Zoom broadcasting for many different platforms. So he generously made this possible. And thank you to all those who contributed kindly. And we will delve into a hot topic, an interesting discussion. I'm going to try to put my main focus on those sitting here, because I like to be present, but I will give a little bit of attention to the screen as well. I took some pictures. I hope to be able to post what we're studying on the phone, on the Zoom as well. Can I give you my tech stuff? Do you have a way of like sending all these files by email? Are you good at that? Bunch of pictures.
I am not.
No? Yeah. Here's a bunch of pictures I took. If I'm able to send it to me by email. Yeah, or send it to you and I'll have it on my sent messages.
Sure. And, just the ones that are on the pages. Sure.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I was speaking with a brother of mine, who's a rabbi in Arizona, and he always is on his toes. He has good lines. And he said, "Oh, what's doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm a little bit busy today. I'm preparing, I try to prepare much earlier, but it's always good to check over and make sure that you're really prepared for the class, our sushi social, with a side of Torah." And so he said, "Oh, what's the topic?" I said, "Heaven and hell." I said, "I know Jews talk about heaven all the time. It's not the most Jewish thing to talk about hell." So he says, "You know what? That's what Susie thought also." And he said Susie was once on a date. He shared with me about a lady in his community, young girl. She was on a date and she liked the guy. And she came home, and her mom said, as a good Jewish mom, "Oh, how did it go? What does he look like? How tall is he? What is his job? All the good things." And then asked her, "Are you liking it?" And thank you so much. And she said, "Well, I do, but there's one issue and I think I have to break it off. He's not a believer." She says, "Okay, he's Jewish, he's a nice guy. What do you mean he's not a believer?" He says, "We had a little bit of a philosophical discussion and he said he doesn't believe in hell. He said it's not a Jewish thing, he doesn't believe in it, or maybe it is and he doesn't believe in it. So if he's not a person that believes in these types of things, I can marry him." So my brother tells me he was a little bit surprised, that's pretty adamant. So the mother reassures her. She likes the job the guy has. She likes the looks. She says, "Don't worry. With a little time, me and you will teach him what it means." He'll start believing that there's such a thing. So this, I actually literally had a conversation recently, the last few weeks. I don't know if it's the summer, people are on vacation, have great ideas. I got a couple of calls from different people about conversion. Now, I don't do conversions. I pass it on to the Bet Din in Toronto. But we had a nice conversation with some of the people. Some of them were just like totally like, "Oh, what is it about?" Some of it was real inquiries. And one of them was asking me, they said they did a lot of research and, they're actually Roman Catholic. They live literally around the corner. They belong to one of the big churches right here. And she said, "Oh, these questions don't offend you, but like I know Judaism doesn't believe in heaven and hell and these types of things, but does Judaism believe in that?" So I I answered her question. I said, I just want to go back because the heaven and hell are not things that Judaism doesn't believe in. Just we might have a little bit of a different perspective. And that's what we're going to address, a little bit of a different perspective on it. And what goes on? No one's been back, so how do we know? Let's see. So if you open up your books, I'm going to try right now to share with those people online. It was sent via Gmail. Amazing. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I'm going to try to share the files. I should have probably done was made a Dropbox and just share the whole thing. Right. Okay, I sent all the files now. Oops. Yeah, I'm sending all the files now. And if you would like to join remotely and you want to open up, there's pictures of the pages. I hope they're in order. If not, by the content and by the page and what we're saying, you'll hopefully be able to find the place. The first part, if you have it, it's called Born Twice. Before I heard this story and this parable, I couldn't have thought of such a parable. Incredible. It's genius. I didn't create it. It's written by a fellow, I think it says over here, who's created this parable. There's a fellow who shared this parable, and I think it's incredible. Here it says at the bottom, by a Hungarian writer, Rabbi Yechiel Michal Tuchashinsky. And he gives a lot of different mashalim. A mashal means a parable. We're going to go around a little bit and read. If anyone feels comfortable, I won't put you on the spot and I won't make you read the Hebrew. Won't make you do anything. But if you'd like to read, we could go around. Would you like to start with the parable? It's a powerful parable and it's very deep. So please pay attention.
Born twice, text 1. In a mother's womb were 2 babies. One asked the other, "Do you believe in life after birth?" "Why, of course," the other replied. "There has to be something after birth. Maybe we are here to prepare ourselves for what we will be later." "Nonsense," said the first. There is no afterlife. There is no life after birth. What kind of life would that be?" The second said, "I don't know, but perhaps there will be more light than there is now. Maybe we will walk on our own feet and eat with our mouths. Maybe we will have other senses that we can't understand now." The first replied, "That is absurd. Walking is impossible, and eating with our mouths, ridiculous. The umbilical cord supplies nutrition and everything we need, but the umbilical cord is so short. Life after birth is to be logically excluded."
It's genius. If you're paying attention to each detail, it's profound.
"Well, I think there is something," the second insisted, "and maybe it's different there than it is here. Maybe we won't need this physical cord anymore." The first replied, "Nonsense. Birth is the end of life, and that's it. And moreover, if there is life after birth, then why has no one ever come back from there? Birth is the end of life, and in the afterbirth, there is nothing but darkness and silence and oblivion. It takes us nowhere." "Well, I don't know," said the second, "but certainly we will meet Mother, and she will take care of us." "Mother?" the first replied with exasperation. "You actually believe in Mother? That's laughable. If Mother exists, then where is she now?" The second said, "She's all around us. We are surrounded by her. We are of her. It is in her that we live. Without her, this world we are in would not and could not exist." "Well, I don't see her," said the first. "I'll believe in Mother when I see her."
It's almost laughable because the accuracy. And I don't know why I've never heard. I don't know. Have you ever heard of this parable? Never heard of it, but it's genius. And this is the idea that there is, this parable brings us, it's a parable of two twins, 2 babies in utero, and they are discussing if there is anything beyond these walls of the mother's womb. And ultimately, they're not sure, and they're debating, and there's always the critic and always the one who has a little bit of a more optimistic outlook. And what ultimately is that there are ideas, there's concepts that we can't comprehend in the tangible world that we're in, because we live in a certain reality. And when you live in a certain reality, it's very hard to comprehend something beyond your reality. Remember, I once did this just recently. I tried this virtual reality, one of these virtual realities. You put the whole thing on your head, and you're literally living that experience. You're standing on top of the building and you feel the wind blowing and you're scared to fall down. You take it off for a second and you're like, well, building, where am I scared of? Seriously, that's a joke. But what is that about? It's real. It's a real experience because that's what you envision. This is what you see. This is what you experience. So ultimately, a better way of addressing afterlife is not what happens by death. There's, oh, we're born and then we die. I would better yet say that we're born twice. We're born once from the womb, and we're born once from the grave. And it's different types of birth. It's different type of experience, and it's a different type of life. And, we're going to see Torah's perspective of what afterlife brings us. And we're going to see what do we think, what does it mean? What is going on? If there is a hell, what's going on there? Why? What is it about? What's the purpose of it? And we're going to delve into that. We're going to see why, more than if, which is going to be discussed. Also, there's the why. Why is there something of that sort? Now, before we start addressing all the details of the ultimate afterlife, heaven, where the soul goes and things of that sort, and why they go to these places, there's a very fundamental concept in Judaism, and we've heard it a million times. Question is, what it's all about, and we're going to, probe into this a drop. And this is the idea of reward and punishment. So those words already sound a little bit religious, the words reward and punishment. And, sometimes you got a little bit skeptical or questioning or, what does it mean, reward, punishment? And before we delve into or discuss the Torah's perspective of reward and punishment, which I hope that when we walk out of this class, number one, we're going to have a little bit of a different perspective of heaven and hell, and I hope you won't experience it. No, but I hope that you'll get a new perspective on it. You'll walk in thinking about these concepts in a very, very, very different light than when you walked in. And number two is the concept of reward and punishment and where it plays a role. And also the difference, the translation, if I would ask you to define reward and punishment now and where it ties into Judaism, you could think one way. And I hope that when we finish up here, we all are going to think a little bit different. So you have over here on page, page 5, thank you. Before we venture into reward and punishment, you have an exercise that if you could look at, there's a reward, and there's a learning experience over here. Learning experience number 1, it's a quiet activity or exercise, and it's for you to rate whether you want to draw it on your paper or whether you want to make a mental note, whichever one you feel comfortable. And it's not to share right now, but it is for you to think of. It has a list over here, and I'm just going to read it out loud for those online if you don't have it as clear. It's from 1 to 10, 1 being most pleasurable and 10 being least pleasurable. So it starts off with a Hawaiian cruise, but I suggest you read through all of them, you start rating them. And be honest, Hawaiian cruise, how pleasurable is a Hawaiian cruise? That sounds pretty good. Just think about the sun and the pina colada. I'm already getting thirsty. And I just have a lousy coffee. Yeah, you could write it in. If you would like, you could keep it. Some people like to keep it. Some people, okay, they did their study and thank you. But whatever you'd like. Even if you write in it, still leave it here. Not that. A lifetime membership to an exclusive country club. We have a couple of nice golf courses in this area. You can already start thinking what type of benefits. A lifetime of meaning, love, social status, true joy. You turn the page, true joy, wealth, and wisdom. So here are some, very nice things that are definitely something to write home about. I think if anyone offered you any of these, you would grab it. But now let's think, to yourself, try to grade from 1 to 10, what would be the most pleasurable and what would be the least pleasurable. Now, I don't think anyone's writing 10. Definitely not on the wealth, but no. But what are things that mean a lot to a person?
Are people on Zoom allowed to give an answer as well?
So for here, it's just it's to look through and to mark down. It's a silent exercise for now. I'm going to tap back at the results in a moment, in a few minutes after we check out some of the text. But for now, it's to think about. But it sounds like you're itching to share.
That's what I tune in for.
Okay. I think the number one pleasure is having nachas from your kids, enjoying your being by your son in New Jersey, right? So as we're thinking about this and filling this out, we all realize, or some of us realize, or the concept is as such, that upon death, upon a person's soul departing from their body, the soul is ultimately freed of their physical constraints. As we said, the soul right now, we're living in a real world. We're not living in an illusion. There was once a fellow in the shtetl that, he was taka, he was a special man, or at least so he tried to portray himself. And he once owed someone money, and his friend schlepped him to the rabbi, and he says, this guy owes me $100. And he says, well, $100, what's $100? This whole world is, we're Jewish, we believe in God and in heaven and afterlife. This world is just not. It says in so many places that it's nothing. So $100 is nothing. So the guy says, okay, well, fine, but for me, it's something. I need my $100. So that's when they had to go to the rabbi. And they went to the rabbi. The rabbi was a clever man. And he turned to the rabbi, the one who owed the money. And he says, no, Rabbi, isn't everything nothing in the world? He says, you're right. You know what? You're right. So go give him nothing. He says, oh, no, I don't want to give him nothing. So then the rabbi told someone else, okay, fine. Takes a big stick. He says, take this nothing and hit that nothing over his nothing. And he said, oh, okay, fine, I'll give the nothing. So the world is nothing, and the world is oh yeah, it's nothing. But we live in a reality. We live in we're experiencing something. Now, the idea of reward and punishment is something that's not just going to be in this world or experienced in this world, but it's something that also we're going to see that it plays a role in the world to come. And God focusing or caring about people's actions for the good and for the bad is a Jewish concept. And it's actually one of the 13 principles of faith. The Rambam, Maimonides, which most are probably familiar with Maimonides. Why don't I just read the little part on page 7 at the bottom, who Maimonides was.
Well,
Yeah.
Rabbi Moshe ben Anarchist, philosopher, author, and physician. Maimonides was born in Córdoba, Spain, after the conquer of Córdoba by the Almohads. He fled Spain and eventually settled in Cairo, Egypt. There he became the leader of the Jewish community and served as a court physician to the vizier of Egypt. He's most noted for authoring the Mishnah Torah, an encyclopedia arrangement of Jewish law, and for his philosophical work, Guide for the Perplexed. His rulings on Jewish law are integral to the formation of Halachic consensus.
So he's from one of the most, organized halachic books. He put together the Talmud in a very halachic. He pulled out all the halachic rulings, and he created a whole set of books. And he writes 13 principles of faith. Familiar with Ani Mamin? Yeah, all the Ani Mamins. Many people have a custom to read the Ani Mamins after Shacharit, after the prayers every day. So in the Siddur, there's songs about some of the Ani Mamins. Ani Mamin means I believe. Probably the most famous one is Ani Mamin, the Emunah Shlema, B'viat HaMashiach. There's songs to it. Ani Mamin, Ani Mamin. There are a lot of famous Ani Mamins. So there's 13 Ani Mamins, and he says these are principles of faith. And he says a principle of faith means it's a principle, and without it, you don't have a proper, strong faith or real faith, which we're going to see in Torah, in God, in Judaism. The 11th principle of his 13 principles is the following. 11th principle, would you like to read? It's from here? Yes, the text number 2a, on page 7, text 2a.
The 11th principle, that God blessed be he gives reward to those who observe the commandments of the Torah and punishes those who transgress his prohibitions.
So that's a principle. He says right there, reward and punishment is a real thing. And he says that it's so real. Now, we're not sure yet, does that mean in this world? Does that mean in the world to come? Does that mean, if you're going to get, what is it called, karma? Like when something happens right away, like get the reaction, how does it work? So let's see, the next text will tell us where he believes this reaction, or we're going to call that in a moment, but where Maimonides believes it's going to happen. So we see text 2b. Eitan, would you like to read 2b?
The greatest reward is to experience the pleasures of the world to come. The greatest punishment is to be cut off from the world to come.
Ultimately, what the Maimonides is telling us is that reward and punishment is a real thing. And he says that it's actually something that is not just present in this world, but it is in the world to come as well. And he says that the most vital part of our reward and punishment will happen in the world to come. What happens now is somewhat trivial, but ultimately it's all going to be in the world to come, which we're going to see why. Why is it going to be in the world to come? Well, what does that mean? But we're going to check that out in a moment. Does anyone, based on our somewhat, so to say, mini exercise, what do you think will be the difference between a punishment or a reward being met out in this world or in the world to come? If you looked at the exercise that we did, there were a lot of physical pleasures. Then there were a lot of, you could call it spiritual, but a little bit more sensitive pleasures. The pleasure of wealth, would you classify as what? Spiritual or physical? More physical. And the pleasure of wisdom. There you go. You see, Roberto is a man. I won't tell you all the secrets, but he's working on some big things for Rosh Hashanah and different stuff. Okay, I won't say everything, but you see, that's a great perspective. But that's in the world that we live in. That's a novelty. But ultimately, cash is very physical, right? People. Commitments are spiritual, Yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, you count on me. I'm your good friend. I'm going to give you a present for your birthday. That's still very spiritual until it comes down to the check, right? But wisdom, love, or the meaning, those are all more spiritual things. Now, if you feel comfortable to share, what are some rankings between those two parties? Which ones, you don't have to share if you don't want to, but what are some things that you ranked higher and some things that you ranked lower? Would everyone be comfortable sharing one thing, whether physical or spiritual, that you gave? What's your highest and your lowest ranking? Anna Marie, would you feel comfortable sharing that? What you ranked highest and what you ranked lowest?
Of the spiritual,
Of all the things that we listed.
the highest in the spiritual is to have peace, tranquility, harmony, love,
Okay. And
and forgiveness.
that's very, very good qualities.
That
And
the other one
yeah,
is to have electricity, water, parks where you can walk, friends, family first, family, and,
mhm,
and that's tangible.
mhm,
That's physical. You have a father, a mother, a sister, a brother,
right,
friends, people that you can meet, a husband, children, all that, a wife, all this is physical. Am I right? The
yeah,
rest,
I hear.
then you can, a car to walk around, to drive around, or a bicycle, or a horse. Any physical means.
So those are all very important things that keep us alive.
Water
that
and
keep our
water and
system running.
The first thing is water and electricity.
Okay,
If we
thank
haven't
you.
got water and electricity, we can't even keep our food.
That's
the
true.
fridge.
That's a good point. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Who else would like to share something, the highest and the lowest? Jacob, would you like to share the highest pleasure and the lowest pleasure? Okay.
I feel like the lifetime meaning would be when people-
Rabbi, we cannot hear. Make them louder, speak louder. Tell them to.
Deal.
Sorry, I feel like lifetime meaning is probably
Okay.
what I
That's better. Thank
and
you.
I ranked that both, and it's probably I would say that falls under spiritual because
Okay.
well, lifetime of meaning might be, the definition might be different depending on the person. But I would like to think that my interactions and everybody's interactions have meaning, and I would very much like to imagine that those interactions would be meaningful.
Okay. And what's your lowest?
The Hawaiian cruise.
You're not a Hawaiian guy.
Just
Jack, what's your lowest?
What's my who?
Your lowest. What's the thing that you care for least?
What do I care for least?
Yeah.
What do I care? Back pain.
Back pain.
The least?
He cares for at least. He doesn't want it.
But Rabbi, how come I only see 3 people? I don't understand. There's 5 participants.
Yeah, on Zoom. And then there's
Yeah.
another 6 in person.
Don't worry about it, Jackie. It's the first session, okay? Just answer the questions, please.
Okay.
Okay.
Who else? There you go. Would you like to share a high and low?
My highest would be love,
Okay.
because I think it's a basis for all interactions with all humans. So there is, like, I study Kabbalah, so
Mhm.
for us, the main thing is so love your neighbors as you would yourself. So on the basis for all interactions should come from loving kindness. So for me, it's not only personal, loving
Okay.
relationships, but every
The
relationship.
concept of love.
Yes. And then my lowest would be social status. I just don't care.
Okay. Okay. That's a lot
Not
of
important.
Okay.
Hawaiian cruise is not
You don't agree with Jacob.
No.
Come on, you gotta give it
that. I
higher.
mean, if you look at the Hawaiian cruise, I mean, it does appeal to a lot of our senses, right? So if it's beauty or the beauty of nature.
You're saying there's some more pleasure in it than just your
Physical
physical. It's
pleasure.
not just a good steak. It has a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, there's some physical pleasures that come from the Hawaiian cruise. I mean, that you can keep for a long time, and like, like a scenery that you'll think is really beautiful.
Right.
Well, it's also this part of the love of the world, right? Of
Okay.
what God created and put on this earth, right? So that's part of the cruise.
I gotta
Whereas
go.
the social status.
My charge, I'm losing electricity. I gotta recharge my.
Okay.
computer. I'll be
We'll
right
see
back.
you.
I'll do-
Whereas social status is a hierarchy among humans, which shouldn't even be there.
Okay. I like
Right.
that. I like that. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Kimberly?
I ranked True Joy, a 10. And the lowest was a lifetime membership next to it.
Golfing on Sundays is not your thing. I get it. Yeah. Eitan, what are your thoughts?
So I named a few things, or
Thanks.
I ranked 3 of those items as number 1 for me.
Okay.
Wisdom, true joy, and love
Mhm.
are they're top for me. I would
Thank you
probably
very much.
lean towards wisdom the most,
Mhm.
because with wisdom,
That's very wise, I must say.
there's so much that you can do with wisdom, and you can obtain and attain many things with wisdom
Through
alone.
wisdom. Yeah.
Through wisdom, everything
It's a
else
key.
pretty much just falls into place, right? Thinking of King Shlomo.
Right.
He-
How many things worked its way out because of the
Yeah.
wisdom.
Right, so
I know some smart people who have never been on cruises, but I hear you.
so the cruise would be something as the least.
That's not your thing.
I don't care for it. And likewise, the lifetime membership, it's meaningless to me.
Okay. What is your thoughts?
For me, the number ones, and there are many, like love, lifetime of meaning, and true joy, Then the least, I would say, it's a social status and the membership in the golf. The fruit is okay.
Fine, I'll do the cruise, if you insist. We're going to pick up some speed because we don't want to be here till the wee hours of the morning. But we do want to address everything on here because it's very important. So we all agree that a spiritual life, or I should say the spiritual pleasures, are far more laudable and far more appreciated and wholesome and real to a degree than the physical ones. So we're going to see what a life of consequence means, because the way that we think about it, before we change our perspective, there is a valid argument to say, seriously, isn't reward and punishment a little bit nitty gritty? Isn't it a little bit like, come on, does God really, he's going to get me back for everything I do? Like, what does it mean? Or I'm a little child, I need to be bribed to do a mitzvah, and I need to be, the carrot and the stick, and I need God to tell me, oh, don't you dare do that bad thing, or else. It seems a little bit belittling to God also, that God is so meticulous, he cares about all those small little nuances. So the concept of reward and punishment on their own sometimes could leave us with a little bit of a bad taste, or at least the perspective of reward and punishment, the way that it's traditionally, perceived. And moreover, let's say, okay, reward and punishment, okay, there's room for it, there's necessary, as you said, social status, sometimes you need reward and punishment, to keep us in check. But should that be an ikar? Should that be one of the main principles of Judaism? A principle means that without it, you're not really observing Judaism to its fullest. So, for example, there's one of the principles is to believe that God created the world. So without believing in one God, let's say, a lot of other things, just your care, your desire, your participation to do a mitzvah might fall away. So that makes sense why it's a principle. the principle that, what's another principle that the Torah its origin has divine origin, meaning Torah was given by God, by Mount Sinai. That's a principle. If someone doesn't believe in that principle, then again, their care or their interest to participate in Torah and to do mitzvahs are that much less. So it makes sense why that's a principle. But there's no such principle that the land of Israel is holy. It's true. I mean, if there's no principle, someone could go around their whole life and unfortunately not have a liking or a connection to Israel. And they're still going to do all the Torah mitzvahs perfectly. There's no principle that God created the world in 6 days. It says it in the Torah, but there's no principle. If someone says, "Oh, I don't know, it sounds a little strange. I think it was 6 months." Okay, it doesn't take away from your observance and your belief in the whole, structure of Torah. But to believe in reward and punishment, that's a principle. It could seem a little bit surprising. No, from the many things to believe in Mashiach. Okay, that's the ultimate goal. That makes sense. But to believe in reward and consequence should be a principle. Could be a little bit surprising. Anyone have want to ask some people their thoughts? But we're gonna. I'll just venture into it. The simple answer, and this is addressed by many sages and discussions and philosophers over the years. What is the reason of reward and punishment? Is that practically, this is a very simplistic answer. Practically, we live in a physical world, and practically, if we're not, not everyone is totally altruistic. Not everyone is going to do everything for the right reasons, right? I mean, your society would be beautiful if that was the case, but unfortunately that isn't. You have to have law and order. So Torah also has a law and order. God is practical. God knows that, just because he asked us to do something and we know it's right, we're not necessarily going to run into it. Therefore, he lets us know, by the way, when you do the right things, you're going to be rewarded for it. And you do the wrong things, it's going to cost you. Fine. That's a very simple level. But there's a little bit deeper, because Hasidus and Torah likes to probe a little deeper. We don't like to just stop at the simple, perspective. So there is a fellow, you said you like Kabbalah, and his name was Rabbi Menachem ben Binyamin Rakanti. If you see it on page 9, he says something genius, so to say. He says this whole concept of reward and punishment, he's going to use a little bit of a different term. And his, did someone not like to read? Would you like to read, Jacob? You care to read? Okay. The punishment described in the Torah. These are the words of Rabbi Menachem Rakanti. He was a Kabbalist in Italy in the late 1200s. And he has some, fascinating and phenomenal works. He worked a lot on the translation of words and explanation of the Siddur. It says over here, the prayer book, and has a number of halachic rulings as well. But he, being a Kabbalist, and he's mentioned a lot in the Kabbalah works of Kabbalah and later understanding of Kabbalah. Let's see what he says. What does he say, the idea of reward and punishment?
Punishments described in the Torah are not similar to punishment needed for transgressing the decree of an earthly king. Rather, the Torah's punishments are natural consequences. The one who fails to observe a Torah's commandment is denied that good and that naturally results from its observance. This is similar to one who does not sow, who then obviously cannot reap, or one who does not wear clothing and then becomes cold, or the nature of fire to cause heat, the nature of water to make wet, and the nature of bread to satiate. Similarly, it is the nature of each mitzvah to elect the positive consequence that are provided, that are promised for its observance, or the negative consequences for its transgression.
So ultimately, he had a different perspective. And I think his perspective is, I don't mind to say it's genius, but it's genius. He says, my daughter tonight, we were having dinner, and being a good 3-year-old, she wasn't interested in eating. So there's 2 ways of telling her is, hey, if you're not going to eat your dinner, then you're not going to get dessert. You're not going to get this prize. You're not going to get bubbles in your bath, Okay, so that's a punishment. You're not going to do X, Y is not going to happen. But then there's a different way of saying it, is that if you're not going to eat, you're going to go to bed hungry. You're going to be very hungry tonight. Is that a punishment? Am I making her hungry? No, it's a consequence. And here's where, we have this graph on page 10. You see some consequences are more direct, and some consequences are a step further, are an outcome more than a consequence. So you can have 2 different people. You have a person who's a business person, a businessman, meaning he has a job, which is a job, whatever job it is. He's a computer specialist, he's a janitor, a tailor, a construction, whatever it is. He's doing a job. He's being paid for his work. And in return, he's taking that money that he got and he's buying food for himself and so on and so forth. Then you have a fellow who's a farmer. He's going to his field. He has to schwitz. He has to work hard. He has to dig and plow and sow. And then his work is going to bring him what? It's going to bring him the food. The second scenario is what the Rakanti says is how Torah works. Torah mitzvos are like that. Are you going to say that the man or woman who was the farmer, and she was lazy this season, she'd rather go on a Hawaiian cruise, right? And instead of sewing and working hard, what's going to happen? Not going to have food. That's a very direct. It's not like you don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure that out. It's like you're not going to plow, you're not going to sew, you're not going to have. That's what Torah mitzvahs are. When a person, and we're going to see that in a Mishnah of Avos, the chapter Ethics of Our Fathers, he says this, and it's brought down over here in the Mishnah. It says, would you like to read? Page 10, text number 4.
The reward of the retribution for a sin is a sin.
So the typical translation and understanding of that is that a mitzvah will lead to other mitzvahs. One good deed leads to the next. That's the origin of this word. Yeah, one good deed leads to the next. You schar mitzvah, reward for one mitzvah is you're going to do another mitzvah. Amazing. And a word for a sin is that you're going to end up doing another sin. Not amazing, right? But that's the simple understanding. The Rakanti chooses to approach it a little bit different. And he says, the actual behavior is the result. Take for example, a person that robs, person who steals, person who is not honest, right? So he steals something. Now, yes, he could get a punishment, but the worst thing is that he just ruined his status. He is no longer a trusted person. He's not going to feel good by himself, and other people are not going to respect him either. Or take it in a relationship. If you have a relationship with a person, a spouse, a coworker, if you are nasty in this relationship, so you get a punishment. What, the coworker is going to scream at you? They're not going to want to work with you anymore. The spouse or the friend is not going to want to spend time. Okay, that's a punishment. But then there's the toxic feeling that your workplace is no longer a comfortable zone. Your home is no longer, nice and all rosy. Was that a punishment? It's not a punishment. That's a natural consequence. And this is the key. The key is that Torah believes that the ultimate reward, we just figured out that the ultimate reward is in this world or the world to come? What's the ultimate? Spiritual or physical? Which one? Spiritual. That's the most quality. And when is that going to be in the world to come? So the second birth, that's when it's going to be. So ultimately, what's happening is that the person is going to get all the reward in the world to come. That's when they're going to get the greatest level of reward. If they're going to get the greatest level of reward, then how is that reward going to be? That reward is going to be a consequence of their behavior in this world. Not always do we notice the consequences in this world, but the consequences are consequence. It's automatic, and those are going to be felt. And that is, we're going to discuss a little late at the end, that is what's going to be the afterlife. Now, if you have that perspective, you understand that reward and punishment, or the principle of the Rambam, Maimonides, what was his principle again? That there is reward and punishment. You see, now that we explained with the Rakanti what reward and punishment means, reward and punishment, yeah, makes sense that it's an ikr. Makes sense that it's a principle. It's a very strong principle of Judaism that what? There is an intrinsic value of every single action that we do. Every action that we take in this world is of intrinsic value. That is principle worthy. No, now we're talking. Because for someone to deny that and say, no, my actions don't have any consequences, then besides for you denying society of what it could be, you're ultimately saying, Torah is not as important that it is. I don't need to do X, Y, and Z. But, so now we could appreciate why it's a principle. Having that perspective and understanding a little bit of what our actions have, now we're going to go to hell. No, now we're going to go into the topic, and we're going to discuss what heaven and hell is. And again, we're going to pick up speed, but we're going to cover, what was everything clearly. Quick exercise. One word. I want one word from everyone. When you read the word and you see the word, and here you go. Chaya, could you please read page 11, learning exercise number 3. Suffering. Failure, you said?
Fire?
Use, okay, that was the first word that came. Fire. Okay, suffering, fire. Agony. Pain. Red. Okay, thank you. Bad. Okay, yeah. All those things. I said fire. Fire was the first word that came to mind. What is the first word that comes to mind? Do this very quick. One word.
Yeah, Rabbi
Marie.
Blotner, you're gonna have to, if you can, raise the volume on your computer.
It's raised. I should, next week I'm going to use a headset that's louder.
No,
So that
Rabbi,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Rabbi, it is not you. You speak perfectly loud and clear.
you're using now.
It is the other people, whenever they're reading or answering, we hear nothing hardly. And I have excellent hearing. It's
Okay.
not
So again, next week I'm going to have a headset, and then I'll be able to pass it to whoever's reading. Could you tell me one word, Anna Marie, when you hear the word?
What? Okay, go ahead. When
you hear the word hell, what would be the one word description that comes to mind?
Maybe question mark, but fire or
fire. Okay, great. Esther, would you be able to share with us one word? Okay, you could type it into your box if you feel more comfortable. Okay. We kind of all have the similar perspective of what it is. And now Let's see what Torah's perspective is. Many of our perspectives of this may have come from movies, from cartoons, from books we read, from comments people have made, right? Surprisingly enough, Judaism does believe in heaven and hell. It does. It does believe in heaven and hell. Yeah, there is a heaven and there is a hell, which is probably one of the most surprising things people hear. What? Really? I thought it's only Catholicism. No, it's actually in Judaism. Where do you think everything comes from? But it's radically different from the perspective that is on the street, so to say. And the concept is like this, because we're going to use a better word. A better word is the Hebrew word. There's no word in Hebrew that's hey, aleph lamed, which would be H-E-L-L. There's no such word in Hebrew. The word is Gehenna. You've heard the term Gehenna? Gehinnom? Gehenna, you've heard of the term Gehenna? Where does Gehenna come from? So it's an interesting, it's Gay Ben Hinnom, which was a valley right outside Jerusalem. And during the times of, I believe it was after King Solomon, there was people that served did the idol worship there. And the prophet ended up saying that those people who participated over there is going to end up being a very sad and not good place of killing and a lot of catastrophes. So therefore, it got the nickname Gehenna. Right, but it's a term. Gehenna is a term.
But
It came from
exactly
a geographical area, which was a place where not good things, where the Jewish people didn't perform well and ended up getting punished for it. So again, but if you're going to believe that the Gehenna or purgatory, or we'll just call it Gehenna for now, hell is a place that is of retribution and you know, going to be damned forever and who knows what. Again, you're back to the first question of that's very, very belittling for God to be so nitty gritty. Seriously, like for us who are emotional beings, for us to say, oh, you deserved it, you know, that so to say has place. It doesn't have place, but we can understand where that perspective would come. But for God to if that's what God's plan is, that doesn't sound so good. It doesn't make sense that a benevolent God would have purgatory be one of the destinations. Just doesn't make sense. So here is the translation of Gehenna. Here's the Jewish perspective of hell in one phrase. Soul rehabilitation. Soul rehabilitation. Soul rehab. And over here, they use the term soul catharsis. Now, before you looked at this page, did anyone know what catharsis means? Now, catharsis, you're good with language, no?
Yeah.
Catharsis means something that is
like vomiting.
It's taking out or purging or very strong, you know, pulling out or cleansing in certain degree. And we'll put it this way. And I'm gonna skip over the next proof just a little bit more lengthily. You know, I'm not going to skip it. I want to read this, and then I'll share with you what the Torah's perspective of Gehenna is, and that is text number 5, which is on page 11. Says that when Acher was an individual, his name was Elisha ben Avuya. He was actually a contemporary of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was very, very famous, from the greatest rabbinical leaders ever. And at some point of time, Acher, this Elisha ben Avuya, he went off the way. He totally left Judaism. He became a heretic, and he became a traitor. And ultimately, he became an Acher. Acher means another guy. He totally changed from his good path. And he's like the icon. He's called Acher, other, because he's like the worst of the worst. Now, when he passed away, it says when Acher died, the heavenly court declared there was like a loud, booming voice, so to say, that said as follows: let him not be judged in Gehenna for his sins, nor let him enter to paradise. And the reasoning, as explained in the Talmud, that the reasoning is, let him not be judged because he engaged in Torah. So it's not right to send him to Gehenna, to send him to this terrible place. Why? Because he studied Torah, so he's not such a bad guy. But nor let him enter paradise because he was so aggressively involved in sinning. It doesn't make sense. You can't go to paradise. That's the worst thing for a person, for a neshama. That's the worst thing for a soul, is that he's not able to enter anywhere. Mm-hmm. So it says Rabbi Meir, who was also a huge Torah giant. He was a student of Acher before he went off. And he actually prayed. He said that when he passes away, he goes upstairs, he's going to make that they're going to allow his teacher into Gehenna. I know quite a few students who would want to send their teacher to, but Meir, out of all people, Rabbi Meir sent his teacher there. What does that mean? What did he accomplish? Such a good student. Wow, what a prodigy. He finally, and when he went upstairs, what was he able to accomplish? That Acher was finally allowed into hell. Shkoyach, amazing. What does that mean? The idea is that Gehenna is not an ultimate, it's not an ultimate punishment. And the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Tanya, Rabbi Shneir Zalman, who wrote the Tanya, who started Chabad, Chabad meaning Chachma, Bina, and Dat, which is taking the Kabbalistic works and making it comprehensive, because Kabbalah, when you read it on your own, it can be very floaty. And he took the concepts and made it more comprehensive. He addresses Gehenna. And he brings a phenomenal outlook. He says like this: you know, we heard as kids, you know, I don't know, I heard definitely, my parents didn't want me to have different candy or nash or sweets before dinner. So you're going to ruin your appetite. What do you mean you're going to ruin your appetite? If someone eats cheapy food, you know, real garbage stuff, and he eats a lot of it, and especially if he literally just finished eating it, he's not going to be able to enjoy a very fancy, impressive, elegant, prime rib from some fancy French restaurant, kosher restaurant. He's not going to be able to appreciate it. His mouth is all spiced up from the chips that he was just eating, and he's all this sugar stuck in his teeth from the candy he was just eating. He's going to taste the steak. He's going to, it's tasteless, right? He's going to want to drizzle, pour ketchup on it. And the waiter's going to, no, you can't put ketchup on that. That steak, you can't put ketchup on it, right? What does that mean? He lost his sense, his appreciation, his taste for what that item is. Person who sins, person who does multiple things that Torah tells us not to, what he ultimately is doing, we said it's consequential, he is ruining his appetite. Gehenna is a time, it's the purge, it's getting out that experience that is ruining your ability to experience real pleasure. If you go to wine tasting, many times they'll give you like pretzels to eat, or something very crackers, or pretzels, something very bland to eat, so that you could fully appreciate the taste of the wine. Because if you're just going to go from one wine to another, so here also, when the soul lived in this world, it experienced things that not necessarily were that great. Ultimately, what he needs to do is to cleanse itself from the experience. And again, what did we say? They're consequential. So by consequence, when a person eats candy, again, if a mother's going to take their child to this fancy restaurant, says to his teenage son, he says, "Oh, you want to taste a good steak? Sure, Mom. It's okay, come." And while he's waiting for the waiter to come, he's popping his Jolly Ranchers. I was like, don't eat that. You're going to ruin it. Spending $200 on a steak, you're going to ruin it. You're not going to enjoy it. And he eats it, he doesn't enjoy it. That was a consequence. It wasn't a punishment. The mother didn't say, you better not enjoy it, then I'm gonna pour sugar on top of it. He lost it. And that's what, and Gehenna removes that experience, removes that negativity that the soul has yet learned because of its behaviors. Now, the next thing, and I'm going to go a little bit quicker with the sources, but you can look at it afterwards. We can discuss it further. I want to wrap this up. Gehenna is not a destination. It's a process in between. It's a purging that will lead a person. And this is where it says, fascinating, that every single person, every single Jew, and many commentaries discuss that even non-Jews that had done good things will go to Gan Eden, will go to the world to come, will have paradise. This is 13. You could see these words. And now, what do you mean everyone's going to go to the world to come? So it says in the Talmud, the Mishnah, it says that even the worst of the worst, the longest, how long do you think the longest, before you look inside, if you didn't look inside yet, how long do you think the longest is for the worst Jewish Russia, guy who did, the woman who did who knows what, how long do you think is the longest sentence in Gehenna? Pick a number. Bernie Madoff got 28 years for his stuff. But I'm saying, like, no, that's he got like 270 years, 120 years. Okay, the duration that they lived. Okay, or if you already know,
I was initially thinking a lot less, but not.
You could.
I would say a few times their lifetime.
Few times their lifetime. Oh wow! So not less.
No, now that you're saying that, but
I didn't say anything, but okay, fine. Daniel,
I was gonna say eternal, but that's
Eternal?
kinda rough.
whew, that is pretty rough. Yes, you nailed it. The longest sentence, yes, that a neshama will ever be in Gehenna is a year, 12 months, not a day longer.
That's actually what I was initially going to say.
Yeah?
Because you said, and he said like 200 and 100. I'm like, wow, it can't be a year then.
You see, now you understand the social pressure. The maximum is 12 months. Now, if we understand, if we appreciate what the Baal Tanya, Rabbi Shneur Zalman, shared with us, that Gehenna is not a punishment, it's a purging, it's a cleansing, it's a time where the neshama is able to, he compares it to refining silver. If you have a refinery that's refining precious metals, I and I were just discussing this, about white gold and rose gold and yellow gold, how much percent gold is in it, we were checking up. Now, if you want to refine jewelry or a piece of gold or a piece of silver, so it's clean, you have to heat it up really well, and then you'll be able to take out all the schmutz, all the not good stuff. That's what Gehenna is. Gehenna is that experience. Now, it's still painful. It is painful for the soul. It's not a breeze. Taking a splinter out of a kid's finger, he's never smiling about it, right? Now, imagine if a person got a lot of splinters. It's really painful. But is the doctor trying to torture this person? He wants this person to live a normal, positive, good, and enjoyable life. But if he has 1 million splinters in his hand, God forbid, it's going to be painful to repair that. Or not even to repair, just to take out that unnecessary thing. There's foreign objects in this human body. Gehenna is that experience, schlepping out that not good that the person experienced. Now, on the flip side, what is paradise? What is Gan Eden? What is this world to come that we hope and pray and imagine and fantasize about? And again, he discusses it. Barbanel was from the mid 1400s, late 1400s. He says ultimately that it's not a physical pleasure. Again, the world we live in is physical. The world to come is not a physical world, but that doesn't mean it's not a world. And like the baby and the fetus, the babies, the twins, they can't comprehend a world beyond their experience. And this is kind of what the Barbanel says in text number 9. He says this, and he says that the concept of spiritual reward is obscure and difficult for a person's intellect to visualize and grasp. Just as the blind person can't grasp the concept of color, so too the spirit will still engage with the physical. When it's still engaged, it cannot grasp purely spiritual matters. So we could, we compare it. That's why this example is probably the best. That's brought about the children in utero. So ultimately, and it continues in the Talmud, explains that the pleasure, what is the world to come? The world to come is pleasure, but real pleasure, not insignificant, not temporary. It's pleasure at its fullest. And ultimately, that's the reward. That is the reward. And even more fascinating is who decides how much of a world to come and your quality of a world to come that you will have. Who decides? You say, oh, the Bet Din Shalmaila, the heavenly court, you stand in front of the 3 judges and they decide. They're not deciding. They're taking an account of what you decided, of what we decide. Every action that we take has an automatic consequence. Every good action we do, the more good that we do, the more automatic positive experiences will happen later to us. A person goes up to the world to come, they're not able to, it says you're not allowed to go, you're not supposed to go to a cemetery with your tzitzis out of your shirt. You're not supposed to pray in a cemetery with talit or tefillin. Why? Because the people that are buried there, they can't do those mitzvahs anymore. The day's over for them. They're not able to do that. So it's like a little bit embarrassing. It's not right. It's arrogant. It's like, oh, I could do this thing and you can't. What is that telling us? That whatever mitzvahs we could do are only to be done in this world. We can't do anything more in the world to come. It's the time of reward. We're getting, in response, we're able to experience all those incredible mitzvahs that our investment. That's when we're getting all of our dividends and all of our investment. And what is it? It's from an outcome of our mitzvah. It's not even like a reward. It's not like, okay, you did X amount, you get this many tickets, and you get to go to the counter and get it out. Yeah. The reward itself, every mitzvah that's done, creates a positive, pleasureful experience. Sometimes we get to experience it also in this physical world, but we definitely get to experience it in the world to come. So every mitzvah and every Torah that we study, when a person studies some Torah, doesn't make a difference what and how, he's able to experience and to study that Torah in a way much deeper and more, pleasureful and with more wisdom than he can here. The Rebbe once said at a Fabrengen, the Rebbe was at a gathering, and he said that there was a fellow who, that there were people that were saying that there was someone who didn't study a certain part of Torah. He said, oh, I only want to study this type of Torah. Let's say just Chumash, or just the Talmud. This other type of Torah, part of Torah, I don't want to study. I don't want to study the Kabbalah works or whatever it is. He said now he's upstairs. It was after he passed away. And he's jealous of a little 10-year-old kid that does study that part of Torah. If someone never studied this part of Torah in their life, someone never studied a little Talmud, or someone never studied halacha, laws, then they're not able to experience that in the world to come. So even though he was a huge Talmud Chacham, this person was a great rabbi, and he studied a lot of Torah, he has that Torah to experience, but he can't experience anything more than what he did. Someone, I heard once an example for this, is the way our imagination works. We can't imagine things we never saw. If imagine a palace, it's going to be a mixture of all these random images of palaces or that we've experienced. You can't imagine something you've never seen, right? So if I tell you, could you imagine a beautiful, beautiful scene on the beach, beautiful palm trees and the sunset? If you're a city boy from Manhattan, you've never, Manhattan's on the water. If you live in the middle of Kansas and you've never been by the beach, you can see videos and pictures, but if you've never seen any of that, your imagination is very limited. But if you've been on that Hawaiian cruise and you experienced that, oh boy, could you imagine that? You could relive that moment. Huh? I don't know. I'm not sure.
I imagine they can still imagine the sound of the wave, the feel of the sand.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know how it would be. I actually was thinking about that because you were saying that person that is blind can't fathom color. So what do they imagine everything black and white, or they imagine color and they just don't know how to identify it? I don't know. No one here should ever know, but it is something that I actually, when I was looking this over, I was like, you know what, I actually want to ask the next person I see walking with a stick. I don't think that's a nice thing to just go over, but like, it is an interesting, huh?
Yeah, interesting combo.
Yeah, I would love to. I don't know. It is interesting, but ultimately, that's how the world to come works. Is that it ends up being a tremendous experience. You get to experience all the good deeds you did, create an effect. Every mitzvah has an effect, and every, God forbid, negative thing has an effect. And you get to reap that reward. You get to experience it, but not in a physical way, in a spiritual way, which we just said ourselves, we proved to ourselves that that's really the ultimate. That is the concept of heaven. That is the concept of the opposite. I shouldn't even say the opposite. The Gehenna, we explain now, just to wrap things up, to give some clarity, and then I'll end off with one important concept. And that's like this, that hell is ultimately not a destination. Hell is a place that is a transient place where a person will spend up to 12 months. Yes.
But is it likened to a purgatory or likened to a hell?
It's likened to a refinery where a person is refined from those things that they experienced.
So is there a notion of hell?
Is there, well again, what you're saying
Like
is
the Christian notion.
What's-
Like, well, if there's sort of a heaven and a purgatory and a hell, what is the equivalent of Gehenna?
Gehenna is a purgatory. Gehenna is a place where the person is refined from the negative that they experienced. Now, a refinery, as we explained with the splinters, it could be very painful, but it's not, there's no devil there with a pitchfork trying to poke the guy's eyes out. There's a loving, caring surgeon trying to pull out all the schmutz. And that sometimes could be very painful.
Metaphorically.
Metaphorically,
Okay.
right? So, the fires of Gehenna, yes, sometimes to refine that silver, it has to be put in a hot thing to pull out all the thing. Many treatments, unfortunately, medical treatments are not enjoyable, are very, very, very painful. But people are ready to go through it. Why? Because it'll get rid of the negative that they want to get rid of, right? To burn a wart, right? I think I never had it, but I've spoken to people who did. And they had a wart in their skin, and sometimes it spreads. Sometimes it can be a real issue. So they go to a doctor, and they're able to burn them out. And it's very. They put on like these creams or different things, or actual hot, and it's painful. But they got rid of that thing that they needed to get rid of. So yes, it's a temporary negative experience, but After that, they're clean, they're ready, and they could experience paradise, and paradise is forever. Again, Olam Haba, the world to come, is forever. And here's the catch, and here's the beautiful and tremendous and powerful thing, is that many times people say, hey, what do I do now? I've already, experienced all these negative things. That's it. So I'm for sure, I wonder how many months I got there, So first of all, Torah says that teshuvah, repentance or return, helps. If a person returns, someone says, I did this negative thing and I did it multiple times, I'm a return offender. And I must have clocked up quite a few months in there. By a person doing teshuvah, and the Maimonides explains what teshuvah means. It means a person decides that he will not do that again. And he or she decides that from now on, they're going to work on that. And the way that a person knows if they really did the teshuvah is if they come across that similar challenge and they overcome it. Then if they did a proper teshuvah, then they could bypass that element of Gehenna. Because they already cleansed it. It's almost like someone who has something. I spoke to someone who had their son needed tubes for his ears. So they're more into holistic medicine, and they said, they're going to have to do it. It's a process. They put him to sleep, and it's painful. Even though thank God we have an anesthesia, so he's not going to experience it. But ultimately, it's painful. It's a surgery that they put it in, or I don't know exactly how, but that's how. It's an experience. They have to put it into the kid's ear and it's going to be there. They spoke to some other professionals that do more natural healing, and they gave certain herbs to eat. Not like anything crazy, certain things, oregano oil and this and that, a few different things to eat for a few months. And the kid didn't end up needing tubes. They were able to clear up whatever the issue was. So that's like tshuva. That's like a person doing repentance, person returning. Person says he bypassed, he didn't need the surgery anymore. Why not? He had that gook in his ears, he had all that stuff, and he wasn't able to hear properly. Well, because he did whatever exercises that got rid of it. That's what tshuva is like. Tshuva is another way to be able to get out of it. Now, what happens when you think about a person's, there's something phenomenal, and when it says over here by Rabbi Shlomo ben Adaris, excuse me, very famous. He was called the Rashba. He also was from Spain. He was also in the late 1200s. And he says like this, and we're going to read, this is the last text that we're going to read, page 11. Page 16, text 11. And he says, when a child is righteous and serves God, it is seemingly on account of his parents that the child is doing so. It is the parents, after all, who brought this righteous individual into the world. It is therefore appropriate that a child can accrue merits on behalf of a deceased parent. However, the charity or prayers of anyone on the behalf of a departed person are helpful for the soul of the deceased. This is why it is a Jewish custom to give charity and pray in order to bring comfort and pleasure to the soul. So there's two things that he's saying here. Number one is just by a person having Jewish children, that already gives them a certain, and they're living as Torah observant children and doing mitzvahs, that already is bringing this soul to a better place. It's already gives this person bonus points, and it saves a person time in Gehenna. And even if a person doesn't have children, but other people do things in their merit after their passing, it also helps. This is why Kaddish is said. Kaddish, after a person passes away, it's preferable that a child says Kaddish. If the child is unable to, then you could hire someone to say Kaddish, but Kaddish should be said on behalf of someone. The Kaddish, no one should ever know, but if anyone did experience, how long is Kaddish said for? Anyone know? 11 months. Why 11 months? Because the longest time that a person could be in Gehenna was how long? 12 months. 12 months, we don't want to make it look like this person is really bad and he's there for all 12 months. So for everyone, we do it a month short, and we say we're confident that after saying Kaddish, definitely didn't serve the long sentence. So when a person has merits, when you do a mitzvah on someone's behalf, even after they're passing, you're able to give them those brownie points. You're able to give them those bonus points. You're able to take, let's say I give tzedakah, take $1, $10, put it in a pushka. And I say, you know what, I'm doing this on behalf of Mrs. So-and-so, nice old lady, I remember her, and she doesn't have any children or whatever it is. I'm doing it on behalf of her. Those $10 and the effect, the positive effect, ultimately acts as if she did the mitzvah, and acts ultimately as a defendant or as a support to her, and could, number one, decrease the time again, and number two, increase her eternal pleasure, God forbid, eternal negativity. So that's a little bit of a perspective on heaven, on hell, and on what we as Jews perceive, what we as Jews believe in, and the incredible mitzvahs that we could all do on our own behalf, and the effect that it has, and on the behalf of those souls departed. They end over here 17. There's just a suggestion list that was just written up by them. But if a person donates to charity, especially during the first year, then, or gives tzedakah before candle lighting on Friday, page 17, or attends a Yizkor service and makes a pledge for charity in the memory of that person, or studies Torah. And again, you're doing these things on behalf of, or in merit of, or in memory of those people. Provides financial support to a Torah student or scholar, sponsors a Torah class, donates books to a Judaic library. There's actually a fellow that I know, when we moved out, he said he wanted to give a bunch of books from his library. His wife passed away a few months before. He wanted to give a bunch of books, so we have a few of his books in our English library that he donated in her memory. So ultimately, he did this kind deed, and it's counting on her behalf. And any mitzvah ultimately, write or donate a Torah scroll, and ultimately any mitzvah that we do has an effect on those people who have departed. So ultimately, to sum it up, our actions, I think the loudest and the most special element that I learned from here, I'm sure everyone has their own takeaway, is that every action has a consequence. And we hope that we're making positive consequences, right? It's real. Our actions really have a consequence. Sometimes, not always is it going to be written up in the newspaper. I always tell people the newspaper is looking for bad news. You make good news, but it does have an effect. It really does. It really does have an effect. And I actually, every mitzvah has an effect. Every mitzvah has an effect, and every action has an effect. So if it's a positive action, it carries tremendous power. God forbid it's a negative action, etc. So that's a little bit of when you come home or when you talk to someone, don't tell them that the rabbi gave you hell. Yes. We want to thank the co-sponsors of tonight's event, those who kindly contributed on the website, and those who, and in particular, the Benjamin Monument at Landmark, as well as my dear friend, Rabbi Akiva Bolter, for the Zoom space, the Zoom platform, Gam Zoom Latova. It was on the email also. If you ever need either of them, you should never need, but if you ever need the Gam Zoom Latova or anything else, you could always reach out to them, or you can reach out to me and I can supply their information. Yes, Anna Marie, how are you?